Welcome back to the Influence DiCOTA magazine show. We're here with Miss Anita DeFrantz today. And we'd like to talk a little bit about Anita's book, her memoir. It's called My Olympic Life. Let me just give you a little intro on the book. My Olympic Life is an awe-inspiring story which begins in 1950s Philadelphia, where a young African-American girl battles through exceptional life challenges in order to become an international athlete, representing the United States' first women's rowing team at the Olympic Games. Serving as team captain and leading her team to win the bronze medal, the young Anita DeFrantz then faces another trial by fire, navigating the Byzantine abyss of politics, which threatened the goals and dreams of hundreds of American athletes under the grip of the 1980 Moscow Olympic Games boycott. Some of you remember that. Through it all, Anita is then chosen to join the ranks of the International Olympic Committee, or the IOC, which is the supreme governing body of the Olympic Games. It is there where she continued to protect the spirit of the Games, fair and free play for all, while fighting back against political intrigue, corruption, and injustice. My Olympic Life is a book that can have its place on any bookshelf. It has soul, inspiration, history, adventure, and sports all rolled into one phenomenal story. If you're an avid reader, such as I am, I recommend you pick up a copy of this book and give it a good read. What inspired you to write the book?
Over the years, I noticed that in the media, stories would be almost correct, but something important was missing and so forth. And I decided put it in my own words would be the best thing to do. So I decided the 2 years that I had between 2016 and 17, I'd work on the book and I'd work on getting the games back to Los Angeles. The reason for writing it is not only that it should be in my own words, but also to share my story, because it is unusual, to say the least. I started out not having any access to sports and wound up being an Olympic medalist and also being a member of the supreme authority in the Olympic world, and been serving on the executive board, and right now I'm first vice president of the International Olympic Committee. We have 4-year terms, which will be over, but I'll still be me. My career as an attorney, I did practice law at the Juvenile Law Center, a job which I loved. I'm still in contact with the great work that they do. It's been phenomenal. They took the case to the Supreme Court, which showed that kids' brains don't finish until they're about 26, 27. So no child should be put in jail for life without possibility of parole. That's just inhumane. And there are other great things that the JLC is doing. So I did that, and then came working for the Olympic Organizing Committee, and then my step into complete volunteer service. But also, I was president of the LA84 Foundation, which was the legacy of the 84 Games, and we were able, during my time, we started with an endowment of $93 million. We spent over $250 million, and I left 28 years later with an endowment of $160 million. So I'm very proud of that time. We taught, I don't know how many now, 70,000 people how to coach, which is really important. Usually we say to volunteers, here's your clipboard and your whistle, go out and coach. Well, that's not fair. And it's not fair to the kids. They need to have someone who knows that they're a teacher. And that's what coaches are. They're teachers. None of this no pain, no gain nonsense. That's the worst kind of coaching you could have. So we taught people how to coach. We made grants, a lot of grants, over, I think, 1,000 grants to organizations. And we have this tremendous resource. The library, which was created, is now completely digitized. So it's open 24/7, 365. And you just go to LA84 Foundation, and then you'll see the Knowledge Center. We did interviews with Olympians. I got to speak to an Olympian who competed in the 1920 games and 24 games. So we did a lot, and we hosted conferences. We had a conference on doping after the 1988 games in the fall thereof, and learned about the beginning of steroids and how that had happened, and why at that time U.S. doctors were saying, oh, no, it doesn't matter. It's because they couldn't ethically give the dosage levels or the length of time of the dosage levels that people who were cheating were using. And if they had, they would have recognized that steroids make an enormous difference, especially in training. Because when you're training, you can train harder and you can recover faster. Those of us who did not use steroids were at a disadvantage. So we were able to do conferences. We did gender stereotyping in televised media, and found what the people who are the head of the networks are not doing, which makes women and girls sports seem like a third thought, not even a second thought, which is just not true. And by the way, women purchase 70 to 75% of all athletic equipment. Now, do they use it all? Probably not. But they are the ones who make the decisions on what is bought. So folks, wake up. Wake up. I'm very proud that the Olympic movement now is very close to parity, with Tokyo being a little less because baseball teams are bigger than softball teams, have more athletes. The IOC, when I started, I was the fifth woman to be elected. Now we're at 38% of the IOC are women, and so there's been a great deal of movement.
Outstanding. How would you want your book, or how do you feel it's going to influence young readers, particularly readers that may be familiar with situations that are in the book?
Thank you for that question. I should have entitled it My Olympic Life So Far when I wrote it, because so much has happened in these few years since then. But my hope is that kids will realize that even if you were not a part of a sports team until you got to college, you can still become an Olympian. It's not too late. Thank goodness now girls are having opportunities through, middle school and through high school, unlike me. But for those kids who don't, yeah, there's still a chance. There's a chance to do so many things with your life that you may have thought were not going to happen. For me, music was wonderful and still is, but it is not my life's work. So you can make decisions. But for me, the most important thing is to learn what my parents taught us, and that is to ask why, and also ask why not. Specifically, we need to do a lot more critical thinking, and that is my message to everyone. We need to think, if something doesn't seem right, why doesn't it seem right? And figure that out, because if it doesn't seem right, it probably is not right. It didn't seem right that girls could not take part in sports in high school, and it wasn't right. But it took years to make it right across this nation. So I hope that truly is my message. Ask why, and ask why not.
Very good. Let's talk about some of your advocacy work for civil rights. So as a lawyer and a civil rights activist, what part of the diversity, equity, and inclusion movement or trend do you play? What's your role in that?
At this point, I want everyone to understand that we are one race, the human race. We are all the same, and yet we are each unique. Even identical twins are not identical. And the notion of RACE just divides us. It was created in the late 16th century to enable people to not feel so badly about putting people in slavery, enslaving people. And of course, over the years, enslavement changed until it made it to the United States, which was the most pernicious form of all the forms. And that's kind of American exceptionalism. That really is a very bad thing. People were not slaves, they were enslaved. You're not born a slave. You might be born enslaved, but you're a human, like all the rest of us, no matter what your skin tone is. So my advocacy now is to let people get that and get the word RACE out of our minds and out of our discussions, because without that, very little will change. And I also want an end to modern day slavery. Right now, there are 40 million people who are enslaved, many of them before our very eyes. You've heard stories about the people who come, mainly women and sometimes men, have come to earn a better living and be able to send money back to their homes. And they arrive and their passports are taken, and you may never hear from them again until they find a way out. And there are ways out. There are phone numbers available across the country that if you call, you will be rescued. And we need to do more of that. They're not 40 million are not all in the U.S., thank God, but our main ports of entries are main ports of entries under this certain kind of visa that allows people to become enslaved. And we need to stop that. We really need to recognize humans as one race, our race, and respect one another. The old golden rule, do unto others as you would have done unto yourself, to me, is so clear and must be observed.
Very good. Outstanding. A couple more questions, Anita. We have the privilege of interviewing and meeting phenomenal leaders from around the world here. This is an international talk show. And again, diversity, equity, and inclusion is really our focus. We've kind of discovered that all leaders are readers. And they typically have a go-to book, some book that they kind of refer to on sometimes it's a daily basis or maybe a monthly basis. Maybe once a year they pick it up, dust it off, or every couple of years they pick it up, dust it off, and kind of reread it. That book is typically found on their nightstand. What book is on your nightstand?
Playing in the Dark is just as remarkable. It was really a set of lectures given at Princeton. It's a small book, but it takes a long time to read. And Toni Morrison is the author. Unfortunately, she's left us. But if you can read that, you'll learn a whole lot about this nation and how the RACE word has entered in the lexicon in ways that are almost impossible to remove. But Toni Morrison, and I'm also reading N.K. Jemisin, who's a science fiction writer who has a trilogy that is just fantastic, and I've thoroughly enjoyed it. She has replaced for me Octavia Butler, who passed away, and she was a wonderful science fiction writer. Both are my skin tone.
That's fantastic. We'll have to look for those books. Last question, and first and foremost, we want to thank you for coming on the show, the legendary Anita L. DeFrantz. If folks who are viewing this, and again, this will go around the world, are interested in reaching out, getting in touch with you, how can they get in touch with you?
The best and easiest way is my website, AnitaDeFrantz.com. I'm also on YouTube. I have a YouTube channel. I'm also on all of the other social media platforms. You can find me anywhere. But again, the easiest way is through my website, AnitaDeFrantz.com.
Well, thank you again, Anita, for coming on the show. We appreciate having you. Tune in next time when we bring you another influential leader on the Influence DiCOTA magazine show. We'll see you next time.